Login accepted.
Hello, everyone. My name is Moose Brown, and today I'm going to be introducing the wonderful world of red teaming. Um, so, who am I? I'm Moose, also known as Delonia _ on discord.com. I am one of the Swinterns. I have done a bunch of beginner level competitions. I was the captain of the latest Cyberforce team and the latest NCAE team, and I was on the 2025 roster as well. So we're going to cover just the basics of what red teaming is, the importance of it, what different career paths there are in the world of red teaming, and finally, how to start getting into it.
You want to apply for Border Swintern, the deadline is May 1st. If you apply, then we'll book an interview for you, or yes, you'll book it, and then you can figure out what you want to do. We have a lot of roles open right now. And also, if you want to be a Swintern, we didn't really talk about what that really means, but a Swift intern is going to be someone that's going to do a summer research project with our student data center. They're going to plan out their own presentation like this one and build some kind of lab with it. So it's a pretty cool opportunity if you want to have something to do. And it's pretty like beginner friendly, I would say. So if you want, you can scan this QR code or check the announcement in our Discord. And then we have Bronco Brawl coming up. It's also known as Frag Fest. Bronco Brawl is like literally this weekend. It's kind of late to announce it, but April 18th and 19th, there's more volunteer times on the actual sheet. We're gonna need to provide networking support for the entire event because it's gonna be like a big LAN tournament. And yeah, if you want hands-on experience with Ethernet cables or switches, feel free to volunteer. If you want free food and prizes, that's a good motivation for that. But yeah, take it away.
Yeah, also just come support Bronco Brawl, especially on the 19th from 11 to 1 p.m. when my esports team plays. So, okay. So to start, what is Red Team? Red Team is offensive security and is the counterpart to what we've been going over the most, which is Blue Team, who is the completely defensive side. They're also known as ethical hackers, usually, because they're not hacking with ill intent. They're hacking specifically to help secure. It helps identify weaknesses that otherwise would be hidden, and they help simulate attacks for practice. So here's a graphic from CrowdStrike that really shows the relationship between Red Team and Blue Team. So Red Team is a simulated adversary that is looking for weaknesses, while Blue Team is incident response and defending against said Red Team. So let's clear up some common misconceptions here. Malicious hackers are not included under the Red Team umbrella. They're known as black hat hackers and aren't part of any quote unquote team because the team is there for support. Red Team is purely for only security purposes. They're ethical, it's authorized, it's simulated, and intended to strengthen security versus the black hats, which are unethical, unauthorized, not simulated because they're real and intended to break security. So complete opposites there. And a common misconception is that Red Team just means penetration testing. A lot of people use the terms kind of in within each other. They're not necessarily the same. It's kind of like the relationship between a rectangle and a square, where a rectangle isn't a square, but a square is a rectangle. And I'll go over that a bit more, subtle foreshadowing. So there's three kind of branches to what Red Team does. There's the technical, the physical, and the social aspects. And these all combine in a lot of different ways. I have some common examples listed on this slide, but even these kind of interact with each other in a lot of ways. Under technical, I put pen testing, even though that really has all of the fields, and we'll go into pen testing in a little bit. and exploit dev, which is very much just technical. We'll go into that later in the career sections as well. Physical includes things like lockpicking and even the most fun thing with dumpster diving. Everyone loves that. And then social or social engineering, also scenarios and drills and training and things like that. So this is a video by Insider Tech. We're not going to watch it, but I would recommend you guys. I linked it in the slideshow. It's a really cool 15-minute video about basically an active penetration test that shows all three of these branches in action. It's a bit of an older video, as you can see by the quality, but it's a really cool watch if you want to learn more about Red Team. So the technical side is what I assume most people here are interested in. So I keep mentioning penetration testing, and that's because that's what a lot of people that are getting into Red Team are interested in. Pen tests are authorized attacks on systems in order to find vulnerabilities, and these often are short-term attacks or like quick breaches that are directly on the system, but sometimes can take the form of a longer term that, you know, takes weeks, months in order to find a way in. And they will often mimic real tactics and techniques in order to like really see where you're vulnerable. And the exploit developer writes exploits and tools to bypass defenses. They are the main devs of a lot of the tools that penetration testers will use in order to poke holes in the defense. And they usually find like deep-seated software vulnerabilities instead of finding the systematic issues and like gaps that penetration testing will often focus on. On the physical side, physical penetration testing, so very similar, but instead of testing the digital capabilities of their security, they're testing the physical security. So a physical site like a building or a vehicle or something like that. This usually involves things like lockpicking, badge cloning, or what's called piggybacking, where you'll just follow somebody into an area that's you're not supposed to be in. And this is usually in order to prevent theft, or there's some other malicious activities like USB dropping or data exfiltration that can happen on a physical site. Some other physical things includes the aforementioned dumpster diving, where you're basically making sure that sensitive information is disposed of properly, and you can't just go looking through trash to find somebody's password or something. Shoulder surfing, looking over somebody's shoulder while they're working and getting sensitive info that way. Tailgating, like I mentioned, where you're following an authorized person. I said piggybacking, but whatever. And USB drop attacks, where you'll just drop a USB and then somebody with their curiosity will just plug it in because, you know, because of this. The social aspect. So this usually takes the form of social engineering. I don't know if you guys have seen this video. There's another video of a woman that's going through like a social engineering hack where she calls a bank and plays like loud baby crying videos out loud on her computer and acts like she's, you know, the troubled mother, the wife of this person's account, and basically tricks the guy on the other side to change the password so that she can get access. So that's part of red teaming, if you were to do it not maliciously, of course. And this is very important because humans are the weakest link in any security process. A lot of vulnerabilities are what's known as picnic vulnerabilities, which stands for problem in chair, not in computer. So yeah, it's very important to test out the capabilities of your personnel. So, like it says, there's a lot of training aspects of this. And then there are scenarios which will blend the line of technical, especially where you're playing through, like doing a play by play of a specific attack and teaching the blue team how to react to it. And this can test your incident response plans and make sure that you know what to do in case of an actual breach, and can measure your actual detection time. So all this talk about what Red Team does, obviously it's important for security, but why? Like, what are some bigger reasons why? Well, it's proactive. So you would rather go hunting after vulnerabilities rather than just, sitting there and waiting for something bad to happen. You want to find the vulnerabilities before someone else does and is able to escalate your problem to their own benefit. So it allows a lot more time. And you don't have to fix everything under the panic of an actual attack. You can spend more time making sure everything's good. And overall, it just reduces the risk of a breach in the long run. It's realistic. So it shows how defenses hold up against a real technique. And I think one of the most important things is that it replaces the assumption of we are secure with actual evidence of you are not secure, basically. That's how it always is. You're never secure. And it really drills in that there's always improvement and this is where we can improve. And practice makes perfect for incident response. You don't want to go into an actual issue on game day without actually going through it before. It helps organize your company. So during a penetration test, you're going to find a lot of gaps, a lot of weak points that you are going to want to focus on specifically. And without red teaming, you either might not be aware of these gaps, or you might be aware of them and you don't know how important they are. So this helps organize what you're going to do. It shows where any investment is needed, again, on those weak points. It teaches all departments how to be secure during training. Again, the human aspect is the most vulnerable part of cybersecurity. So red teaming really teaches others what to look for. If a red teamer runs a phishing scam and is able to point out to the 85-year-old office worker that, no, that's not a real Uber gift card, then he will presumably not do that again. And it holds people more accountable for their security. It reduces the, oh, I didn't know that was a problem issue, and really makes sure people are on top of patching everything. And it also can quantify how bad a problem actually is. And at the end of the day, a lot of laws require some form of red teaming audit. So nowadays we have a lot of regulations that require some kind of offensive security, and having a solid red team foundation in a company will provide documented proof of your due diligence in securing, which will not only shield you from the law, but also public disappointment. And it, like I mentioned in the previous slide, it quantifies the risk for the executives that might not realize how big of an issue security is. If you can red team, do some kind of penetration test, and tell the C-suite, hey, these are the specific things that I found. This is the data that can be exfiltrated. This is the real world effect of the security breach that is imminent at this point. Then it can really make them consider security posture more. So Red Team can prevent a lot of issues. These are some specific examples. There are a lot of other examples. So the SolarWinds breach in 2020, foreign threat actors infiltrated the supply chain, and it affected 18,000 plus organizations, which includes a lot of US government facilities. And we know that this could have been prevented by Red Team because there are leaked internal emails that show a distressing lack of secure practices, which could have been easily mitigated by having a Red Teamer tell them what to do. In 2020, there was a Twitter hack that a bunch of high-profile accounts like Obama, Elon Musk, and other like big accounts were hijacked and used for a Bitcoin scam. And these hackers use social engineering on employees. And once they got access to anything, then there was a lot of insecurities within Twitter that they were able to escalate it really quickly. And investigations by the FBI showed that there was an extreme lack of any social engineering awareness training. And that the internal, like I said, the internal foundation was so easy for just a normal employee to escalate and get admin permissions, basically. And then the Equifax breach, where the personal data of hundreds of millions of people were exposed. And this was due to an unpatched software vulnerability that, with a known fix that had been available for months, and they were using a software in order to detect private traffic. And that was expired for over a year, so that they weren't actually able to detect the breach until it was far too late. Like this certificate that they were using, it didn't work anymore, basically. They need to renew it, and they need to pay the company more money, because that's how everything works. And so therefore, like, it wasn't working anymore, basically. So a Red Teamer that could go in and say, like, hey, we're screwed up right now, we can't actually detect something. Or if they were to do an authorized test, and then the company could see, oh crap, like, we can't see that you're in, then they could have fixed it and hundreds of millions of people's data would be safe. So everyone's favorite part of any presentation, the career slide. So what careers are available in red teaming? And there's a lot more than what I'm going to cover, but these are the basics. So penetration tester, again, we've mentioned this before. I'm going to be hired by a company in order to conduct assessments on systems and basically audit them. You can start as a junior penetration tester, where you're just sitting along for the ride and you're learning specific tools like Metasploit is a common one, and other offensive security tools. You're basically an intern. And then once you rise to a regular penetration tester or a senior, you are given clearance to independently conduct assessments. Skills include a knowledge of the different tools that you might use, technical knowledge about like where a system might break, and also like common attack patterns that you can exploit, and solid writing skills. So when I went to the national competition for NCAE in 2025, we had the opportunity to talk to the red teamers. And when I asked, like, what's the most important skill, he said that your report writing skills, because a lot of people can just hack in and tell you, oh, you're vulnerable here. But to write a report that makes the executives actually listen takes a lot of skill and practice, and it's one of the most important bits, shockingly. So then there's the red team operator, which personally, to me, sounds the most fun. You're part of a team that executes actual adversary simulations, and it differs from pen testing because these attacks are usually very long term. They'll take months, maybe even years. Blue team doesn't know necessarily that there's an attack. Think about it as a dress rehearsal of a real attack. So on game day, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to react like it's an actual attack. And this will often include all three branches where you'll need the physical, the social, and the technical aspects in order to actually do a breach like this. Penetration testing also uses them, but that does hinder a bit more on the technical side. This is really, you throw everything that you have. You pretend that you're a real problem, and you find a way to get in so that you can report back. And the skills really hinge on a strong knowledge of attack patterns and the ways that actual adversaries would attack. So instead of just, attacking the company, you're going to mimic a bad guy. You need to have a knowledge of systems and vulnerabilities, obviously, and you need to have a lot of problem solving. You need to think on your feet, and you need to figure out what's the best way to approach this as if you're a real hacker. So that, it sounds awesome. So purple team. So this is somebody that works specifically with the blue team in order to find gaps. So they aren't just penetration testing, but they're working one-on-one with a blue teamer and going step by step, and then they can work together collaborative to fix the vulnerabilities as they find them. And it bridges the gaps between the sides, so it's less of a red versus blue thing. It's actually both. Reference to competition. It's the best of both worlds, and the skills include a lot of similar skills as we've talked about before. Strong knowledge of the system that you're actually working with. You need to have teamwork. You need to be able to work with somebody very well, since you're going to be working basically one-on-one with somebody else. And you need to have a strong knowledge of the tools that can both break a system and fix a system so that you're able to collaborate and fix it once you break it. Exploit dev. So we talked about this a bit earlier, but basically these people write custom offensive tools, and they find things like zero-day exploits in applications. So any issue that an app might push out that immediately a hacker can pounce on, they will be able to detect that and help fix it before, again, it becomes a major problem. Usually these can help secure a specific application where, they work with an app developer basically. And these skills include a lot of technical knowledge. This is the most technically heavy position that we're going over. So that will include fluency in a lot of different programming languages so that you can exploit whatever you need. Tons of technical knowledge and report writing / documentation of whatever tool you might develop. You need to be able to explain clearly how you found a zero-day exploit, because that's kind of difficult. You can get in, but retracing your steps and whatnot is kind of tough. So that's exciting. Everyone loves career paths, but how do you actually get into red teaming? And this was something that I was trying to figure out because it's kind of difficult to find courses online for hacking because it's kind of taboo. People think of a red teamer as a hacker, and you can do a lot of harm with offensive security. So, what are some of the pathways? So, CTFs, that's the basic first step. It's a great way to build your technical knowledge and get hands-on experience. So for those of you that don't know what a CTF is, it's a capture the flag problem where you're given a system and you need to find a way to retrieve some information. So in that way, it's very similar to a penetration test where you're given a system and you need to retrieve information. So CTFs are kind of very beginner level. They can be difficult, but a lot of CTFs are great ways to like practice that technical skill. And there are a lot of CTF competitions, and competitions generally are viewed very highly by professionals. So having a competition that you can like put on your resume, like, hey, I did this huge CTF competition, I know ball, I know what I'm doing, then you'll be looked on a lot more favorably than somebody that might have the same skill set but doesn't have anything to show for it. So these are some of my favorite beginner CTF learning tools. So Over the Wire is a very cool way to like learn the command line specifically, and a lot of like CTF things that have to do with a Linux terminal, which is also helpful in the professional world because a lot of our systems are based on a Linux infrastructure. So Over the Wire has a lot of different levels that can keep you occupied for ever, basically. The beginner level is called Bandit, and there's like 20 something levels. And it ranges from basic networking things like just connecting your shell to decrypting files and using password hashes, all sorts of things that are very helpful in later on CTFs. And it's just a cool gamified way to get started. So I would highly recommend checking that out. It's what like really taught me the Linux terminal personally. And then Pico CTF is probably the most popular CTF competition. They have a practice gym where it has hundreds of different CTF problems that you can solve. And there are all sorts of difficulties, all sorts of different ways that you need to find the CTF. So it's a great tool in order to like get hands-on experience before doing some kind of competition, which Pico CTF also runs their own competitions. And there are a lot of other competitions. Swift hosts some, and there are some other ones regionally that you can look into that we usually announce. So certifications, everyone's favorite. So these are important, obviously, to show your working knowledge. So the usual one that people will like start with, or if it's not their first, it's their second or something, is CompTIA Security Plus, where it's just an all-around good general cert and a good way to like dip your feet into the water of cybersecurity. It builds a really good foundation for more specific certifications. I'm sure like that's been covered before. But CompTIA also has more specific things, and Pen Test Plus is their specific one for penetration testing. So if you want to go into that specific path, then Pen Test Plus is a good second step. It's still more beginner oriented, but it's recognized by a lot of companies and is highly sought after. The next two certifications are definitely less beginner, and they are more high level. So CRTO, or Certified Red Team Operator, is obviously specifically focusing on the Red Team Operator thing that I talked about in the past, where you're acting as an adversary. And so it is a very specialized but very strong certification that is highly regarded by professionals and hopefully will make your resume stand out. And then there's the OSCP, or the Offensive Security Certified Professional, which is another like all around, but for specifically offensive rather than Sec Plus, which has both blue team and red team. And this is a massive certification. Like, it is very expansive. It's very well rounded in all sorts of different red teaming aspects. It's a little expensive, but it's going to make you look awesome, and everyone wants to look awesome. And my favorite part is experimentation. So you can make like a sandbox VM or something, and just go crazy. Like, just try using some of these tools that you've learned in order to break it. One thing that I have done and I found a lot of fun was, my family had this like old $100 laptop that basically didn't work anymore. So they gave it to me, and I wiped the entire system and installed a completely new operating system. And that's just my dummy laptop for whatever the hell I want. And so I hack into it. I just have a lot of fun. Try Hack Me or Hack the Box are popular tools in order to have a more structured way to learn these skills, but curiosity is a big part of learning, and we are always learning. So having your curiosity and thinking, oh, like, what if I try this? Or I wonder what this vulnerability looks like in real time, then you can do that. And it's really, really fun. And keeping a log and like keeping track of the different things that you've learned is also a great way for future reference and to remember the things that you've learned. This was another thing that when I went to the competition, that the red teamer said that he wished that he had done more of this kind of sandbox experimentation. A lot of people, when they're starting out in red teaming, invest in some kind of server and use that as a pen testing server so that they can like actively learn. They can set up weak security systems and break it, or they can see what malware does, or etc. So that's not something that you need to do, but it's something that, I mean, I find fun, and was told to me by somebody that knows a lot more ball than I do that it's really good. So thank you. That's the intro. Are there any questions about more red teaming stuff? No questions. I guess I answered all of them in my phenomenal presentation, right, guys? 10 out of 10. No, but personally, I find red teaming extremely interesting, and I hope you guys will as well after this. I hope you learned something, even the people that probably knew everything already. So